Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Night. And it's been about a week for me as I've been on the road, but there's been a lot of talk regarding, once again, college football playoff expansion and, quite frankly, all the disenchantment with one another. ACC, SEC, Big 12, Pac 12. Stephen and I were just talking about that, with the Pac 12 not being real friendly with some of it and some other people being a hard line. SEC's happy with 4 because they know they're going to get 2. Guys, are we ever going to have a definitive playoff format prior to the contract for the current one ends in 25, I believe, or 20 and
23, I believe. Or 20. I believe
no, it's 25. 23, they can adjust it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like these people are. It's kind of like a cage match at this point. Like they just hate each other, and I understand. You're trying to build your brand, whether let's just pick the ACC just as an example. You're not as powerful as the SEC. You're not. You're not as powerful as the Big Ten. They have Ohio State, they have Michigan, they have different. Clemson's been the only team in the ACC to do something. Yeah. And I know they're trying to claim Notre Dame. They're not really a full-time member, so that doesn't count. And they're just an example, but everybody's trying to tug and pull. And today's show is more about just trying to get generic information out there because I by no means have a definitive end-all, be-all opinion. I don't know if you guys do, but I'm not sure this is going to end well in the near future. Stephen, I'll start with you. What do you think, like from a UCF perspective? Obviously, this is a UCF podcast. They're going to the Big 12. What would you like if you were sitting in the commissioner's chair and you were representing the Big 12? Are you worried about it being 6, 8, 12? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I feel like the Big 12 is kind of the one conference that's secure in whatever happens. Like whatever happens. Because they're kind of that like middle tier Power 5 conference where obviously they're not like the SEC or the Big Ten, but they're kind of that like the third or fourth.
The third
team.
bigger conference,
Yeah.
Yeah, them and the ACC are pretty much on par.
Yeah. So I don't really think they're as concerned. Personally, I've been a proponent of the 12 team.
Yeah. Me too.
Where you have 6 conference champions and 6 at-large bids.
What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, similar to that. I don't think they have too many problems to worry about. And they're getting a lot of teams coming over there too, so they should be excited about it.
Now that goes right into the following question. Stephen said something that I, without even digging into it, I know is an issue for the traditional Power 5. Stephen said 6 conference champions. That is going to go over like a lead balloon because that 6th, and I don't know which conference that he's going to reference, the AAC, which the UCFs and the Cincinnati's and Houstons are in right now for one more year, is not going to be the same moving forward. And it is by far the best non-Power 5 conference right now. Why would the conferences that are the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac 12 agree to let somebody in that's not going to have one of those 3 representing their brand? The Sunbelt, the Sunbelt will get beat by 30 by Alabama in a playoff game without them playing their starters in the second half.
Coastal and Louisiana.
That's just like true. That. And they have some pretty good players and all that. The depth difference, especially at the end of a season, is enormous. It's so important. And if you saw it in the title game, you can't replace the kid that got hurt for Alabama. Jameson, that's different. But just in general, the depth is very important. So I think that's going to be a problem, and they're looking like Alabama or Georgia is going to get to the end of this thing pretty much every year. That's just reality, barring a quarterback being injured or something. They are the 2 best teams. Okay, fair enough. But there's still 10 more spots. They're going to look – they want to get 3, if not 4, which is going to really tick off the other comp, but they have by far the most teams. And this is where the lying and the backdoor scheming begins in college football. So how can we come together and just throw out your best generic Stephen, I'll start with you. This will work to get people to agree. Not that you want it. What would be the best scenario where you could get people to at least consider it? That's hard at this point. What number or what route would you take?
I think you'd need to at least guarantee every Power 5 team, Power 5 conference, their champion being in.
Agreed.
Because the Pac-12 won't agree and the ACC won't agree if it's not that.
Agree.
Yeah.
And then you'd additionally have to add something for the group of 5, or they're not going to agree to it, like whether that be one spot or something.
Yeah, that's the part I'm struggling with. Is it like, okay, in the final rankings, they have to reach number 7 or something like that. That number, you got to eventually have a hard line number.
Maybe make it like the BCS where they had to be, I think it was top 15.
The highest rank.
The number, but yes, but something in that regard, that's possible.
That's how I would do the rest of the teams, like a BCS ranking.
It's because you'll never come to a conclusion because everybody can't play the same schedule. No. There's just no way to compare apples to apples. It is just 100% eye test, and everybody's biased. That's
going to be subjective regardless.
Yeah, that's 100% it. You are correct. Yeah. So with you,
I would go 12 teams because I feel like it rewards the conference champions, and you give the best group of 5 team obviously a chance to play in. I feel like a group of 5 teams, though, to be able to have a chance to get in, they need to play 9 conference games, and they need to play at least one Power 5 non-conference game, and then we'll rank the best group of 5 team, and they'll get in with the Power 5 conference champions.
With that, I'll give my take here in a second. Before I do, I want your two with this. We talked about this briefly, and I stole this from I forget the On3 pod. I can't remember. It's Danny Cannell and the guys. They do a very good job on their podcast. I was listening to it on my way home from Pensacola this morning back to Tampa, and they were talking about what if Baylor had lost to Oklahoma State. They won by like an inch. One of the craziest endings to a conference championship game in any sport that I've ever seen. They had first and goal like the 1 or 2 and didn't score. That's bad. But it's what happened, and it came on that last play. Let's say he punched it and he scored. Does Cincinnati get moved out by Oklahoma State because they would have had one loss, blah, blah, blah. These scenarios, if Cincinnati, they were really good this year, but they were above the expectation of a traditional non-Power 5 school. If for some reason, this is hypothetical, that had been Coastal Carolina and they had just shredded everybody this year, but their schedule is not fantastic, and they're ranked like 7th or 8th. They're not number 4. They're right on that cusp. How do you keep out a team that played in the Big 12 or the SEC? Like if it's Arkansas, the SEC West is a bloodbath. How do you keep out a two-loss Arkansas that loses by 3 to Alabama and 4 to LSU and beats everybody else to a team that didn't play a schedule in the top 75? Those are the questions that I don't know, because like in full disclosure, Sam Pittman, who's the head coach at Arkansas now, I used him for a reason. Tremendous football coach. He's an old O-line guy. He wasn't even the coordinator at Georgia, and he got the Arkansas head job, and he's a tremendous coach. He's got a really good staff. So I respect him. He's an old school guy, but this is how we do it. And they beat people up. So I just like him. But seeing how they play, I have a hard time believing on a neutral field that any so-called non-Power 5 school that doesn't have that special guy, like a few of the kids at Cincinnati this year, were not your traditional pretty darn good players from the non-Power 5. They got a few crap hits.
Some of those guys were transfers from Power 5. So.
Yeah, and they got Ford came from Alabama, the running back. He's just a dude. Yeah. He's from the Tampa area. Outside of something like that, do we really expect there to be true honesty? If you have a hard line, you got to have, a Coastal or a Troy. How does a school like that get vindicated? Because then you put them out there, barring me being wrong, they're going to get stomped by Ohio State or, Oklahoma or Notre Dame or Florida State or something in a playoff game. Yeah. Are we sure we want to do that is the first thing. And 2, how do you justify it with the schedule part? That's the one I'm struggling.
Just for the people, who would you put into that if Oklahoma State punched it in? Would you have put them over Cincinnati?
With the schedule they played, yes, I would have.
Okay.
But they beat Oklahoma. Like, who did Cincinnati beat?
Yeah.
I'm a big head-to-head guy. That's just my thing. But they lost
okay Notre Dame team.
Notre Dame was pretty good, but Notre Dame got beat by Cincinnati. So that's a really weird dynamic. If Notre Dame had been in the same scenario, and they lost at home to Cincinnati, I still give it to. I mean, that's head to head. You're out. Mm-hmm. That's a wrap. But Oklahoma State did not play Cincinnati, but they sure as hell played a tougher schedule than Cincinnati.
They were having a great season too.
Yeah, I mean, they just flat out choked the final minute of that game. There's no nice way to say it. They choked. To
a freshman.
Cincinnati would, in my opinion, would have been bumped. I have no way of proving that. Nor does
I agree.
Else, but do you think, Andrew? Who would you have picked? Would you have picked Cincinnati or Oklahoma State? That's hard. I'm not saying.
I'm being realistic, just to put myself back in that mindset, because I remember watching Oklahoma State that season and watching that Baylor game. If they would have won that game, I would have wanted them to go to the playoff, regardless of Cincinnati's great season.
That sucks. But that's the problem with 4 right there.
Yeah,
right.
That's one of the I'm okay one way or the other with some of the numbers. That game, and then Cannell and those guys bringing that up, 6 at minimum for me, because then you could play the first 4 play and see 1 and 2 have a bye. Yeah. Okay, those are the 2 teams that are probably going to win it, no matter how you do it anyway. So, what difference does it make? We see, a couple more teams. It just is what it is. But that solidified it for me. I want to expand it, and then we get into the number. Here's my take on the number. The first 6 or first 8 or whatever is one thing. I think you make it 12, but my answer is not going to make the little guy happy. The first 8 need to be Power 5 at minimum, probably the first 10. And the reason is talent. I believe in the eye test first and foremost, and I know the little guy will never accept that answer because they're afraid they're going to get locked out, and they will. They're not as talented. I'm about talent. I'm a talent evaluator. That's what I do. So that's how I think. But I've been at practices where the guy that I shake his hand, I look down at my hand and I can't see it. That's not at a non-Power 5 practice very often. That's at an SEC, ACC kind of. That's just the way it is. They're different kids in the trenches. I talked to you guys about that prior to the podcast. UCF is starting to get those kids. Cincinnati definitely did, especially on defense this year.
Yeah.
And Houston being in the big – I told somebody this yesterday, Bobby Acosta, who was the head coach at IMG and then moved over to Del Valle just outside of Austin. The difference in the SEC is the linemen. It's not any secret. They got guys in front of you that they can run a 3-man line and get a pass rush and drop 8. That has nothing to do with Coastal. That Coastal Carolina does not have that. Cincinnati, again, this year, they had that.
Yeah,
but that's the exception. It's the only non-Power 5 school I've ever seen like that. I would like 10 Power 5, and then I don't know how if you have 2 that are in the top, let's say 10 or whatever, Coastal or whatever, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But they have to meet a barometer. There has to be a hardline number, and I'm not set on what that number is.
Do they conference games, or do they have to play a Power 5 schedule?
To make it into that top 10.
Yeah.
They're going to have to beat, like this is an example, at least a mid-level P5. In other words, like Coastal plays a home and away with Indiana in 2 years. If you beat them the first year, that helps your ranking the next. And then, if you go to Bloomington and beat they're not a great football team, but if you beat a Power 5 on the road, that's going to carry cachet. Yeah. That's something that Cincinnati didn't normally have, but they played Notre Dame this year. I mean, that's got a lot of cachet, and they won in South Bend.
It was their catalyst.
Oh, yeah. If they hadn't beat Notre Dame, if they'd have played just a regular, like a lower end, like they beat Vanderbilt, would they have made a playoff? No, they wouldn't have. Yeah. Their strength of schedule would have sucked. That's just true. So for me, it's 10 Power 5 and figure out the other 2, and it's subjective. If there are no top 10 teams that are non-Power 5, too bad. Now, how that works, I don't know, because the TV networks do not care about non-Power 5. They don't make them any money. I've been in those small rooms with bowl people and stuff. They do not care at all. They are there for one thing, and that's dollar signs. It is not about fair. It is not about NCAA eligibility. It's not about balance from region, none of that crap. Who makes us the most money? Checkbox.
Right.
That's it. So I know what I'm saying is what they want. So I have a feeling that the conference that UCF is in right now, and I'm not saying it's being disbanded, but I don't see how they recover, and I don't see how the little guy has a true quote unquote seat at the table or demanding anything. what Steven said, like the 6th. Who the hell's the 6th?
Yeah.
Like,
I
go ahead.
think the original plan and that they had worked out and then agreed to, and then both the Pac-12 and ACC backed out of for whatever reason.
Like, here's let me start with the Pac-12. USC just signed a coach. From what I'm told, they're a private school, so their numbers are not on public record. $147 million, and he has access to a plane 24/7. If you can drop $147 million on a coach, you should be able to figure out how to get one freaking team into playoff and probably 2.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because Uncle Phil runs Oregon. He is one of the richest human beings on the planet. If you can't get some kids, and I know they got to recruit out of state, Oregon doesn't have any players, they should be in contention for the playoff at minimum 1 in 3 years. Every kid I talk to, who do you want to visit? Oregon is on that list because they're just fascinated with it. And I'm talking, and you know where I live. I live in, I'm interviewing Alabama, Georgia, and Florida kids.
Yeah.
They don't even know where Oregon is. Like, kids down here don't know geography at all. The bottom line is still the same. It shouldn't be that hard. So that the Pac-12 thing is goofy. Steven, you said the ACC was the other? Yes?
The ACC, was also an issue school.
Yep.
Well, an issue conference, sorry.
I'm guessing they're so concerned about, Ohio State's probably going to get in 9 out of 10 years. You know, barring the quarterback being hurt at Ohio State, they're going to out-recruit everybody else pretty much. Outside, they're one of 5 schools that are in the top echelon. So they're just worried about numbers. Clemson gets in, but we would always get a second team. They're worried about, and I get it, Coastal or somebody like that getting a spot instead of Mac Brown in North Carolina. Something like, that I kind of get. There's going to be some teeter-totter points with some of that where it's just going to be gut feel. These kind of people that do these deals, they like things in black and white. What I'm talking about and how football works, it is 100% subjective. That makes them very nervous because they want to be able to go back to their bosses with hardline numbers. Those do not exist. So that's kind of interesting. They don't. Just from talking to football people, and I've been doing that the last few days, it's not going to go the way the ACC wants or anybody not named the SEC.
Well,
pretty much. So
SEC is going to put its stamp on almost anything, right?
Well, they got the best players.
Yeah.
And right now,
they make the most money as well. So
they have the best coaching. Look at the SEC West and just go through your head with the head coaches. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like that. How it ended up being aligned, like outside of Harsin and whatever that is at Auburn, I have no idea what that is. Was he cheating with the cheerleader? Was he not? Were they firing him? Were they not? They tried to implement a rule. You had to be at a hearing if you were in trouble with the university, but they'd already signed off on him to go on vacation, and they did that while he was on vacation. That is the most bizarre reality TV show thing I've ever seen in college football. Auburn is always in the news for the wrong reasons. It is bizarre. By the way, I'll say it again. Do not hire a West Coast guy to coach in the Deep South. Horrible idea. Last point on the SEC. I will bet anybody right here now, if it goes to 12, there will never be a year there aren't at least 3 SEC schools.
3?
Minimum. I'll give you the number. I'll give you.
Give me. Let's talk about that.
Alabama and Georgia over
the
next 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
Who's betting against them making the playoff if there's 12?
I feel
they only need one more
as well.
A&M could be. They're recruiting well. Jimbo, that's a complex thing.
Doing some weird things.
He could be in trouble. He could be in trouble for that. And some of his coaching stuff, he's making it too hard on the kids. His system's too complex. That's my bigger issue. But Arkansas could sneak in. LSU, Florida just hired a new coach.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. At some point, Lane's going to get in. I'm shocked, but the former UCF coach is doing pretty good at Tennessee. They can score some points. It's not out of the realm. And then you got the Pirate at Mississippi State. Missouri's just signed one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Everybody's competitive.
Yeah.
Hard for me to see them not getting a third, like somebody out of that mass of humanity. And they're adding Oklahoma and Texas.
Man, I know if you're a realist,
how am I not getting 3?
If you're a realist of college football, he just put it out plainly. While the SEC is the top conference in college football,
It's
That's
by
a
a landslide, though. It's
That's
not
a
like
lot of competition.
they're the first three. I mean, now that they got Texas and Oklahoma, they just gutted the Big 12. They did.
Ooh.
Baylor is, and I had a conversation with Bobby Acosta yesterday about this. Their coaching staff is tremendous. They are the one school that I think has a chance. I don't want to say rubber stamp them being the conference champion moving forward, but he's tremendous. As he escalates his talent, that's the one that gives me some nervousness with UCF because they run an unusual scheme on defense, and he's going to have really good players. They're right in the middle of Texas. Yeah. It's not hard. I literally just drove by their stadium. It is badass.
Yeah, campus is beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they got money out the yin yang. It's a private school. It's a good school. You're an hour and 20 minutes from Austin, about an hour or so from Dallas. It's right on I-35. Outside of them, though, I mean.
Baylor and Oklahoma State. That's probably about it.
Yeah, I mean, but now Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati make it very
added teams. Yeah.
That's – do they get a second? And I'm just using the Big 12 because, UCF's joining it. They're in the exact same boat. I mean, they are as parallel as it gets with the ACC. But are they? Here's the question next. With the three additions that we just mentioned, we're all familiar because we're UCF guys. Is the ACC moving forward, barring – I have no idea what's going on at Miami yet. It's too early. So they're, we'll see what Mario does. He's recruiting well. He just doesn't even have his staff together. I have no opinion. Florida State doesn't do something this year. Andrew and his Knowles, being a Florida State fan traditionally, they're going to fire him. But he's recruited well. It's weird. They can't figure a quarterback out consistently. I'm hoping that because that kid seems like a good guy. I'm hoping what's
Jordan Travis.
Yeah,
pieces around him.
I'm rooting for him, but you guys
he makes it hard to root for him.
Some of his passes are unbelievable.
Yeah, he's up and down. He's a
then
very
the next
good
one he throws it to the cheerleader. I mean,
he's a great athlete. He's a great guy off the field as well.
Yeah.
So am I, but I'm not the quarterback in the Knowles.
Just to make a comment about Mike Norvell, I think he might be one of the guys that's protected by the boosters. I feel like he might have been out of there last season, but I think
he seems like
he's a little protected.
Yeah, he's got an extension.
Yeah, well, they're trying to protect him for recruiting purposes. That's an old school thing.
Great recruiter. There you go.
When you get the contract extension, that means it's feast or famine this year. Yeah. We're going to crap on you if you don't do exactly what we want, but we're going to lie about it all the way if you do what we want and say we knew all along. No middle ground.
He had the #1 player in the nation signed. He didn't lose him to another, Power 5 university. He lost to HBCU. So
yeah.
Don't get me started on that guy. But
he got the extension right.
We'll say that. We'll do it too.
But they got annihilated on signing day. But it's just one of those things. So is it Florida State? Matt Brown's doing pretty well at North Carolina. They might need that team short term to try to give them momentum. This season is very important as the playoff dynamic moves forward because they have to come up with something where nobody's going to agree. Let me be very clear on that. Where they can at least not kill each other is probably the better term. Because like what Steven mentioned, the ACC and the PAC, for whatever reason, they're just different line of thinking. And they're both being dragged along because the other conferences just don't see it the same way. And everybody has to be congruent to a certain degree. I mean, they just do.
Right. Let me ask you guys, if the SEC can put in 2 teams and the Big 12 can put in 2 teams, what about the Big 10? They put in Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan.
Oh, they'll have some years.
They could get 2 to 3 every year.
Right. I mean, it's easy to get 3 in the Big 10 too, because they have 4 tradition-rich schools at least. And then there's a school like it's weird. Iowa and Wisconsin. Okay, outside the numbers are not as talented, but in the box,
Penn State as well.
That's what I mean. Like Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are the 3 definitive. And Michigan State can be at times.
Michigan State,
yeah.
They're coming
up. Wisconsin over the last 20 years or so. And then now, like Iowa was in the Big Ten title game. It's not out of the question. If Iowa comes in, they get stopped by Ohio State in the, conference game, which almost everybody does. So does everybody else. If they go 11-1 in the regular season and they lose 27-3 in the Big Ten title game, you're going to tell me they're still not in the top 12?
They'll probably get in.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's in Michigan's probably, or either
Michigan's under them,
State or Michigan State, one of those three, and Wisconsin. One of them is going to probably fall in there. So the Big Ten and the SEC right off the bat could have 6. That's not going to make people happy. But college football is the definition of unbalanced. It just, I don't know why, it just is.
They can't make everyone happy with this.
That's what I mean. There is no quote unquote. This isn't like a business transaction where 2 banks come together and everybody wins. This is a transaction is where you just try to stay above water.
Somebody's
they're still making money. So
somebody's going to get left out.
My only other point with this is the following. I don't have a timeline. Danny Cannell and those guys, when I was listening to their podcast, I think it's called the On 3 podcast. They don't know either because they keep pushing it back. These guys do not get along. Talking about the commissioners and they bring lawyers with them and stuff. They all want a slightly better piece of the pie than the guy next to them. They're all the same guy, but with just a different logo on their polo. That's it. So how do you fix that? I'll give you guys a shot. Steven, how do you fix that?
Someone's going to have to make a concession somewhere, or you're just going to have to piss one guy off. Like,
I agree. I agree.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, because you can't have – you got 5 Power 5s.
Yeah.
You got the Sunbelt, the AAC. That's 7 right there. Now, they're all going to be – they're all going to figure, we'll get our conference champion in, but we want a second team. 2 times 7 is 14. 12 is the highest number. The math doesn't work. And that's where Steven is 100% correct.
Somebody's going to be mad.
Yeah. And they know what I said is true about the Big Ten and the SEC. And I know you guys get it too, because you both follow college football. You're not going to tell me that 11-1 Iowa, even if they get beat up by Ohio State, who again,
I'm not putting in Group of 5. I'm not doing
it. You're not putting in Coastal Carolina over them. And that's going to be,
I'm sorry.
And when they go to the table and say, we need guaranteed, they don't bring the same money that the ACC does, that the Big 12, any of the Power 5, pick one. That's where there's going to be a bazillion guys making a lot of money off clicks that are crap, because alumni of non-Power 5 schools like that, they're just seeing it through a singular lens. So football is not like basketball, where you have an equalizer in a game like the 3-point shot or getting a good player in foul trouble. The talent wins out 90-95% of the time, unless you just get turnovers or fluke plays. So I don't see how that happens. Go ahead, Andrew.
I got a point of contention. I got a question for you guys, and this will probably entertain some people that's watching. All right. We talked about some of the problems, in the Big Ten, in the SEC, and how some of these teams can put in 3 to 4 schools. So how would you guys feel about eliminating divisions to where the top teams with the best records will be put into the playoffs? So we don't have an East and West. We just have the top 2 schools, and those teams that go to the playoff.
So you're saying like Power 5, like just use the Big Ten. Ohio State.
Let's say the SEC. You got the SEC East and SEC, or the West. It'll be eliminated.
Regardless,
so the top schools, and then we'll choose 2 schools, or however that goes.
So in the SEC
divisions,
right, in the SEC, if the 2 best teams record-wise were Georgia and Florida, even though they're both in the East, they go. That's what you're saying? Like technically,
right.
Traditionally,
there you go. Yeah. How do you guys feel about eliminating divisions to maybe help with the playoff?
Even if you're going to use it, like the AAC has, they still have like pseudo divisions, but the 2 best teams go to the conference championship. Like that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
It's just scheduling.
I just feel like that would help with the Big
eliminating
Ten,
divisions.
Those 5 teams that can go, the conference, the champion and the second best team can get a chance at the playoff. If you go all the way undefeated, lose to the conference champion, those 2 teams can go to the playoff, and the rest of the guys will have. You didn't make it. Everybody can't be happy, but they'll get a bowl game, a good bowl game.
The SEC wouldn't agree to that because they're going to expect 3. That's the SEC and the Big Ten will be the hardest with that. But I understand your premise.
Yes, sir.
But you're not going to tell the SEC they don't have. They think they've got 5 when they might. In some years, out of the top 12 teams, there's probably 5 SEC teams. This past year wasn't one of them. There were a couple kind of on that cusp, but they didn't. Like Ole Miss was up and down. Mississippi State was up.
Arkansas,
LSU was a mess. Florida almost beats Alabama, and then they almost lose to like Jacksonville. That is all over the place. It was a weird year. But in most years, conservatively, there's 3 and probably 4.
Yeah.
They can get 5 in some years. You're just never going to get other schools in other conferences to agree to that because that means they don't make as much money.
Okay.
This is not about fair. People out there, just to be clear, this is a business. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way to $5 billion.
And for money, and we want to incentivize the campuses. How do you guys feel about those 4 conference champions that get an automatic bid or maybe an automatic bye week? Do those teams get an on-campus game, or it's not a bowl game? It's like a home campus game, to where that makes it more competitive to win the conference championship.
Here's the problem with that: when the conference season's over and you play like a championship game, it's the first week of December. If you want to play Wisconsin in Madison in December, and you're Auburn, I don't care if you're the better team. There is no way to prepare them for 15 degrees and snow blowing sideways.
That's when the weather.
They will never agree to that. The Southern teams will never agree to that.
I thought about that as well. But hey, if you don't win those games and you got to play in Madison, hey, we can't make everyone happy.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be a slaughter.
Like a financial perspective, it decentivizes winning to get to those top 4 games or like top 4 seeds, because then you don't get to play at home and you don't get that extra revenue.
So
they would split that in the conference.
They would find a way. But so the 4 teams, do you guys both agree should get a bye game?
Like the first 8 teams, 5 plays 12. 11 plays 6.
And that 5 and 6, should they get home games, or should it be a bowl game scenario?
That part I haven't really thought about. But again, because of the weather factor, you got to play indoors or down south or out west. You're not, because fans aren't going to look, except for you're going to call an Auburn fan and tell him that they're going to Madison. He's like, okay.
That was a good point.
That ain't happening. And I can tell you right now, the committee and the towns, it doesn't have to be Madison.
Yeah.
What they want is butts and seats, but not just at the game. They want butts and seats at the restaurants and the hotels. Auburn fans are not going to Wisconsin.
Yeah,
They're not.
Yeah,
I just was thinking about rewarding those top seeded teams, and it'll make it bring revenue in for those campuses where it'll extend facilities, maybe even help out some of the group of 5 teams that make it.
You're looking at it from a pure sport perspective.
Yeah,
I've been in too many meetings where that has nothing to do with it.
They're not having it. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's not ticket sales, but like a buddy of mine used to run the bowl game in Jacksonville, and he told me it had 0 to do with the best teams. And he went on radio and did it.
I feel like we sort of consolidated that 4 best team thing, or just kind of ruined it. That's been the most subjective thing ever. It's the 4 best teams. Yeah,
so I don't know, but like let's say Wisconsin won the Big Ten or Ohio State. You can play in Indianapolis or Detroit every year, and that can be their home game. It's a major metropolitan area. They're set up for sport, and you got a freaking dome. Yeah. Is it perfect? No, but it's not snowing sideways. You're inside. You can play in Minneapolis. Like Wisconsin could play in Minneapolis. Ironically, that's a rival, but they've got a dome there. That's a third option in the Midwest.
I mean, or you could use like the smaller bowls. I feel like the Boca Bowl would probably be down for that, because your ratings are going to shoot through the roof.
Could you imagine? They want Wisconsin because of what I just said. TV revenue is going to stay the same because it's going to be high, but restaurants and hotels, Wisconsin people are coming down to Florida in December. Are you kidding me? They would jump on that plane as soon as they could. Absolutely. There's a way to make that work.
The pre-Christmas bowls, you could probably get a couple of those in rotation every year for the quarterfinal game.
Why not? The one that UCF just played in against Florida, the Gasparilla, you're going to tell somebody that's snowing? We got our one, like Iowa makes it to the playoff. You're going to tell them they can go to Tampa? Are you kidding me? They on the plane.
That would be awesome.
They'd hitchhike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They do whatever they could. So that part will take care of itself. The on-campus thing just doesn't work across the board.
Yep.
They'd have to be really creative. And unfortunately, that takes away the home. And I get it. You're never going to have like South Carolina, Clemson, Florida State. There's just no way to prepare them for snowing sideways. Those kids, a lot of them have never seen snow. Go call one of the kids in Dade County that plays at Clemson or plays at UF or UCF or whatever. When was the last time it snowed at your house? The answer is never. Yeah. There's no way to prepare for
down
that.
Florida, down south kids don't see no snow like
that.
No,
Eric Gilliard moved to Kansas and it snowed the first day he was there.
Welcome to Kansas. Welcome
Did not
to the
like
Midwest.
that.
Well, that was his choice for transfer. Good luck to him. That's no comment further.
We got another kid that just transferred. I wonder what happened, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah. Last parting shot. As far as UCF, do you think it's going to benefit them? I mean, it's obvious having more than 4 is benefit. That's obvious. Yeah. Do you think it benefits them more if it's 8 or 12? Steven, go first.
Again, I feel like the Big 12's kind of set, but I feel like 12 obviously benefits because the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get those 7, 8 spots every year. If it's 8, if it's 12, you have a chance for 2.
Right. That's pretty much it.
We're all in pretty much agreement. I mean, between the Big Ten and the SEC, in my opinion, one of them each year will have like 3. Okay. But one of them will have 4. That's just my opinion. And that can change. USC has been down. Oregon was goofy this year. Maybe they're the Pac-12 has not done crap compared to what they should in the last 10 years because USC is a roller coaster. Yeah. At one point, they were considered the greatest program in the history of college football 15 years ago, and then they just fell off the map right after Reggie Bush left. They had some really good teams, but they never finished. And then once they got to 210, they just went, they haven't recovered. But that program is in the middle of LA. It's not real hard. They could, quickly be up, and then just one other school somewhere could be. And then that's why I agree with 12, because like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, all these schools are still tradition rich. And now Florida's got a new head coach. Miami does, etc. You kind of wonder about that too. I think it's far better for UCF if it goes all the way north to 12. I just don't know who's going to agree to anything. I mean, I'm just being honest. I haven't heard anybody say anything that makes me believe this is going to end amicably. And at some point they have to have agreement. That is a really awkward I'd love to be in there, but the awkwardness with some of these conversations.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a metal detector at the door.
We won't go that far.
Touche. But anyway, thank you everybody for listening. I'm going to have some more discussion about this. I'm going to be at IMG here in just a little bit, interviewing some football prospects. They're having a combine and whatnot. I want to try to get some more intel on this because when I was just on the phone with Garcia, who's going with me over there, I'm like, this stuff is ridiculous. These guys can't agree on anything because, I know it's terrible. So he's as dialed in as anybody in my business of scouting. He knows guys across the country. When he agreed with me in 1.2 nanoseconds, I'm like, this is not a good sign. This is not a good sign. So I was hoping he was going to give me some positive, and he just piled right onto the same level that I was on. So, but anyway, UCF fans, everybody out there, please hit like and subscribe, hit that notification button. Probably going to do something similar to this early next week. After some more intel is in, I'm going to kind of try to go through it and look at it from a singular lens next time instead of a broad one. Yeah. You pick a school, we'll do Big 12, obviously, but I don't want to use just UCF. What makes sense for the Big 12? That's something I want you guys to think about over the weekend. I'm going to have a recruiting podcast tomorrow with all my information from Texas. I have some very interesting stuff. I've got a story coming up. UCF recruiting in Texas. I've actually had some kids, they knew I ran a UCF site, and they mentioned, hey, I hope UCF recruits me and offers me. Unsolicited. That is a very good sign. Yeah. And I had some pretty interesting stuff from Bobby Acosta at Del Valle High School. He thinks that Gus can recruit not only Florida and Texas, he thinks he can get California kids because he thinks his name is big enough. That's really intriguing. So that's an article I'm working on right now. I've got some quotes from Bobby. He's a great guy. Used to be the head coach at IMG. So everybody out there, have a great day. Thank you much. Appreciate it.